guys, it's Luke here for our 2022 Sony Open value picks for Draftkings DFS contest. Here in this video, we're going to cover my 6 favorite plays, priced $7,500 and below for the Draftkings slate this week. Of course, we head over to Waialae Country Club, the second leg of the Hawaiian swing, and this venue is very unique on its own. You have a short track, a track that really emphasizes approach play in your putting, which is going to make some of these stands down low a little bit interesting. We're typically looking for the ball strikers in the 7K and 6K range, but this time around, really we're looking for guys that can fill it up with the putter. So with that being said, let's hop right into it with our first value pick for this week. Cool, on the screen you guys can see our Patreon projections for this week, of course updated with some new ownership numbers and of course some of our new modeling for the late additions to the field. Our first value pick though is going to be Brendan Todd up here at $7,500, a perfect course fit for this week. He doesn't have very much distance off of the tee, but sure makes up for it with his accuracy. And about accuracy, isn't really going to be a huge issue here at Waialae. His accuracy into greens with his irons and of course his world-class ability to make putts on Bermuda grass are going to pay him huge dividends. If we take a look at his ownership, right now moderately owned at just 7.7%, so it's not like you're investing 25-30% of your lineups into a Brendan Todd to get leverage. You can do that with just a 15 to 20% mark there and be more than comfortable. Let's move over to some of the shots gained metrics for a Brendan Todd down here at $7,500 over the last 24 measured rounds, and that's what you see with all the shots gained metrics here on the screen. He's been gaining on approach of late, gaining over 0.2 strokes per round in that category, which is great to see. And why we haven't seen him have some top finishes, because usually when the iron play comes around for Brendan Todd, he really starts cooking. It's been because of the putter, which has been uncharacteristically bad of late. That is definitely something that we would expect to come around, because in 2021, he was one of the best putters on the PGA Tour. In 2020, he was the best putter on the PGA Tour. For his career, gaining nearly half a stroke per round on Bermuda grass, like we've already mentioned there. And to take a look at some of the further metrics here for a Brendan Todd, what we really like to see here, top 35 in the field in driving accuracy. We know that, but with some of the shorter iron distances here, from 50 to 125, 125 to 150, so on and so forth, he ranks above average for this field. So Brendan Todd, even though he might not be the best iron player on the PGA Tour, when you give him a wedge, a mid-iron, he's at the very least going to be average. And with his putting ability, particularly on these type of surfaces, that could be enough to not only go out and make a cut, but to put himself in contention as well. So really do like him here on this slate at moderate ownership and a great price. Next value pick I want to go down to here is going to be Denny Mccarthy at $7,400. Very similar course fit here to somebody like a Brendan Todd. Not very good off the tee, while he's a little bit longer off the tee, trades that off with a little bit of accuracy, but much like a Brendan Todd, prolific on Bermuda grass. In fact, the best player in the world with any type of a real sample size on this surface. So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive on him. He is going to be a little bit higher owned, but at the same time, Denny McCarthy is an absolute smash play this week. Over his last 24 measured rounds, right around average with his approach play, which is right about his baseline. He's not going to wow you with his approach stats. He can go out there, gain 8 or 9 strokes on putting, and still have a very solid week. It's when he goes out there and gains a few strokes on approach where he really contends and potentially put himself in the top 5. In terms of some of his more advanced statistics, if we take a look at here, driving accuracy has actually been pretty accurate of late, which is not something we're used to seeing from a Denny McCarthy. If we go over to the approach stats, it's been decent from that vital 150 to 175 range. And of course, the scrambling, the sand saves, the putting, all what we expect. Just world-class all around right there. Just putting from 20, 25 feet, that kind of thing. Just exactly what we're looking for. So because of the putting on Bermuda grass, which we've already outlined, because of how well he's been playing of late, and because of the price tag, he could very well be closer to $8,000 in this type of field. It's going to make him an excellent value regardless of the format of your contest, whether that's cash or a large field GPP. Next up down here, we're going to have Taylor Pendriff at $7,200. Taylor Pendriff kind of bucks the trend of those first 2 golfers. Obviously a little bit shorter, more of putting first specialist. Taylor Pendriff is an amazing ball striker. When he has his game down, he's one of the best drivers of the golf ball, pretty much on the tour. I mean, he would be top 10 on tour in terms of shots gained off the tee if we just took the fall as a sample size. But even better is that he's great, prolific even on Bermuda grass, gaining nearly half a stroke per round on the surface. And if we take a look at some of the advanced metrics, well, he didn't have the best end to that fall swing. Over the last 24 measured rounds, losing on approach, also not as good of a gainer on putting as he typically is. We know this guy long-term has been one of the best, most prolific ball strikers in all of the Korn Ferry Tour, and that should come around. That should definitely see some positive regression going forward. And if he's going to be gaining half a stroke per round putting as well, is one of the long bombers this week, I think has a really good shot. A lot of these other bomber types that really get it out there, can pop on approach, are just losers on Bermuda grass. It's really hard to find that combination of all three traits there. So even though Taylor Pendriff has a very wide range of outcomes, he could very well come out this week, continue to lose on approach and not play very well. If he turns that around, he's live to win this golf tournament, not just finish in the top 5 or top 10. He has a lot more upside than anyone else in this range. In fact, more than those other two value options we've already went through. Just also a much lower floor. So more of a GPP play here for somebody like a Taylor Pendriff. If we dive into some of the advanced metrics, driving distance, number 21 in the world. That's to be expected. The guy is just an absolute bomber. And the rest of the advanced metrics, at least just over the last 24 measured rounds, not great, right? The approach stats haven't been good. That's why he's losing over half a stroke per round. But when we get over to the putting side over here, starts to get more green, right? He's right around average from 5 to 10 feet, but makes a ton of putts in that. Really just, that's where you make your hay, in that 10 to 20 foot range, where you're dealing with 50 to maybe 10 percenters in terms of your percentile makes. That's where you really differentiate yourself. So Taylor Pendriff, if he can turn around that iron play, going to be a very intriguing option for the slate at very, very low ownership at just 2.7%. Next value play we're going to get to is a little bit cheaper down the board. It's going to be Grayson Sigg at $6,700. And Grayson Sigg has yet to have his coming out party for the PGA Tour, but when it comes, it is going to be a massive, massive entrance. I mean, this guy was one of the best players on the Korn Ferry Tour. We've seen a few other players like a Hayden Buckley, Steven Yeager, trying to think, Nick Hardy, right? All of them have had good performances to this point of the year. A few of them even have contended in some of these golf tournaments. Grayson Sigg was far better than all of them. In the Korn Ferry Tour, he won twice this year. He was top 5 on the money list. Somebody who went to the University of Georgia, which is world renowned for having one of the best, if not the best golf programs in all of the nation. And Grayson Sigg grew up in that area. He's from Augusta, Georgia. He's very used to these Bermuda grass greens. And the reason why I've seen a lot of people around the industry not touting Grayson Sigg, kind of talking about him as a little bit of a fade, it's because of the shots gained Bermuda number right here. You're losing 1 stroke per round on Bermuda grass. That is not his historical baseline. We have on record 12 rounds for Grayson Sigg, so it's not like it's 4 rounds. It's not like it's a non-existent sample size, but at the same time, in the grand scheme of things, that could very well be due to variance. This is somebody who's from the Southeast. He's very used to these grainy Bermuda grass greens, and at the University of Georgia, put up a prolific record on this type of surface. Was one of the best college players in the entire nation. At one point, was actually in the running for College Player of the Year 3 or 4 years ago. So a Grayson Sigg, the metrics aren't going to look great on him because he hasn't really had that coming out party yet. But like I said, when it comes around, he's going to be somebody you want to be early on. So let's talk about some of the advanced metrics and why I really think he might be able to turn it around here. First and foremost, his iron play, while it can be a little bit inconsistent, when he pops, he'll gain 6 to 7 strokes on approach. We saw that with the Korn Ferry Tour. As we've been able to get a little bit more data with the greens in regulation and whatnot for some of those starts, we've been able to extrapolate that when he's really on, he's capable of gaining strokes in bunches. In terms of putting, he's right around a Korn Ferry Tour average putter. But again, much like his iron play, a popper. When he has it running, when he's able to get that going hot, he's able to ride that momentum and gain prolifically in the projected range, because we don't have all the GPS data for these Korn Ferry Tour starts. It's projected right around 5 strokes per round that he's gained at times on the Korn Ferry Tour. So somebody who, again, has that high volatility that we're looking for. And because he's so used to these Bermuda grass surfaces, because he's not one of the longer hitters out there, one of the worst drivers of the golf ball, that's definitely his main weakness. He's both inaccurate and not very long. He doesn't have to worry about that at Waialae. So if he's going to have this coming out party, I do expect it to be at this type of venue. It is why I will be all over him this week for GPP contests. Next up, and this is going to be our last value pick for this. Actually, we have 2 more value picks. This is our 5th value pick. going to be Peter Maldotti at $6,600. This is also a very good setup for Maldotti, somebody who's short off the tee, does it with the approach play, does it with the putting. You can see gaining 0.51 strokes per round on Bermuda grass per round, also coming in at less than 2% ownership. So you're talking about trivial ownership there, very easy to get leverage. And let's go ahead and talk about why we like this pick. First and foremost, he's been gaining on approach of late. He's usually wildly inconsistent with his irons, but in the fall swing, we saw him have some nice performances. A bunch of made cuts in a row, made 5 or 6 cuts during the fall. Also didn't have his best part of his game. Lost nearly half a stroke per round putting. That makes no sense for Peter Maldotti. Obviously, he was very stout around the green and kept it together off the tee. And that's why there's a ton to like here. Is he's typically one of the worst off the tee players in all the PGA Tour. And that isn't a small sample size thing. This guy's been around forever. So let's go ahead and talk about why that's been the case. First and foremost, he's been decent with his irons. Typically ran around 150 in the world at the best with a lot of these categories, but been in the top 100 over the last 24 rounds, which for a Peter Maldotti is excellent. Something that we definitely shouldn't ignore there. The putting, very consistent typically, but you can see, he's much lower on the list than we typically see him. He's right around the 30s to 40s consistently on the PGA Tour. He's gaining 0.3 strokes gained putting per round on average over the last 2 years. So to see him losing, and again, let's get to this number here, 0.446 shots gained putting per round is glaring, right? There's a lot of positive regression to come for a Peter Maldotti. And again, at just 1.5% ownership right here, that is going to be a very nice spot to get some leverage. So like him there at $6,600. We did talk about Pat Perez on my core picks video. It's not like I don't like him here, but wanted to go ahead and give you guys a few more options to add to your player pool that I hadn't already touched on. And let's move on, talk about our last value pick here. And Beau Hossler's price here at $6,200. I know we haven't seen the guy for quite some time. It doesn't make sense. He's by and far the most talented player in this price range. Somebody who's actually put up some nice performances on the tour before. Nearly won golf tournaments. A lot of the other guys around here can't say that. I mean, Kodairo's won a golf tournament before, but pretty much everyone else in this range, Ryan Gay's getting up there in age, right? He's the outlier. Just you haven't seen contend for quite some time. So let's go ahead and dive into the Beau Hossler metrics here. In terms of the course fit in the recent form, not going to jump off the page, right about average in both categories. I guess the recent form of late hasn't been too bad. Shots gained putting on Bermuda, gaining 0.4 of a stroke per round on the surface, which is of course a prerequisite for this golf course. Let's go ahead and talk about the ball striking though, which is really why I'm excited to go and play a Beau Hossler. Let's find him on this list. Here he is. All right, so over the last 24 measured rounds, he has not had the approach play. And if we take a look at Beau Hossler's record over the years, he's typically wildly inconsistent with the approach play. But much like a Peter Maldotti, much like a few other guys on this list, like a Taylor Pendriff that are a little bit volatile, when they get at iron play going, they're gaining 4 or 5 strokes over an event. The putter has always been there, gaining half a stroke per round on the greens. Around the green, he's always been an all right player. I mean, he's one of the better chippers of the golf ball, but of course, he's horrible off the tee, which is, of course, a little bit of a trend here, losing 0.2 strokes per round off the tee. And a lot of that is due to the driving distance, right? You can see his, not driving distance, driving accuracy. He's one of the longer players on tour, but he also misses almost every single fairway. Like we've already mentioned, fairways here are so small that everybody's going to be missing fairways this week. And at the same time, because of his distance, he's going to be able to lay back a lot more often. He's going to be hitting a lot more driving irons off the tee rather than drivers and still having wedges into these greens. So while the driving accuracy would be an issue at most golf courses, he has the putting, he has the iron play that we're looking for whenever he's getting hot with those. In terms of some of the advanced metrics here, inside 5 feet, inside 10 feet, one of the best putters on the tour. And this is the most consistent range. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight this because there are a lot of times out there where people are, targeting guys that are good from 10 to 20 feet. And well, that's a good extra to have. It's, the cherry on top with some of these good putters. That's also the most volatile range. Jordan Spieth had that 1 year where he made nearly 30% of putts from 15 to 20 feet. That'll never be done again. Of course, he's seen tons of regression since then. He's still one of the best players on tour from that range, but he's nowhere near what we saw there. There's just a lot of variance in that category that might fit that type of build. There was somebody when I was doing my research that was like top 10 in both categories. Must have seen it somewhere else. But yeah, anytime you see somebody that's like too strong in those categories, I mean, even right here, Roger Sloan and Ryan Moore, both 19, Steven Yeager 19 here, 47-38. While it's great to see that they're good from those categories, it's just a little bit volatile. We're not necessarily sure it's so repeatable. Whereas with a Beau Hossler down here, where he's 12th in both inside 5 feet and inside 5 to 10 feet, that's a lot more repeatable. That's just down to mechanics, is hitting the putt on the right starting line. Whereas you're open to a lot more variance, a lot more bumps and bruises as the ball travels, the longer from the hole it gets. So really do like Beau Hossler there. In terms of the ownership, 0.9% on a Beau Hossler there, so also trivially owned. That is all I've got for this week's value picks. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you guys have as your favorite value for GPP contest. Maybe it's somebody I had on my board or completely off my radar. In either sense, I would love to hear from you guys, so make sure to comment that below. And as always, really appreciate all of your support here on the channel. We're getting close to that 500 subscriber mark that I'm working towards, so really appreciate all of you guys. If you haven't already liked the video or subscribed to the channel, make sure you guys go out and do so. It'd be super clutch. That way you guys can help us grow this channel. And of course, don't miss any of the content we're coming out with in the future. We're gonna have more Showdown content coming out for the Sony Open this week. Those will be live streams on the morning of the event, so make sure to look forward to that. We're also gonna have our DFS live stream tonight. That'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern time, right after the NBA lock. So all of you that are crunching lineups can head over here afterwards. Go ahead and start crunching our golf lineups. Bring any questions that you have. We're going to be talking the weather for the slate, also player poll, ownership projections, and like I said, just everything that you guys need to know for this weekend to have success in your contest. But until then, guys, good luck with all of your bets, all of your DFS lineups for this week, and let's get this cash.